What if I told you that Pastor Jamal Bryant and New Birth Missionary Baptist Church just turned one of Christianity's most sacred moments into a social media spectacle? What if I told you their latest communion service has believers around the nation calling it disrespectful, irreverent, even blasphemous? From flashy performances to questionable symbolism, what happened inside New Birth has left both churchgoers and critics asking the same thing. Has the line between ministry and entertainment finally been crossed? Stay tuned, because this story might change the way you see modern megachurch culture forever. Jamal Bryant has long been one of the most prominent and polarizing figures in modern American Christianity. As the senior pastor of New Birth Missionary Baptist Church, his sermons, style, and public persona have always sparked conversation, from praise to criticism. But the latest controversy surrounding New Birth has taken things to a whole new level. During what is supposed to be one of the most sacred rites in Christianity, the communion service, videos and eyewitness accounts reveal a scene that has left both church members and the wider public stunned. Reports describe an atmosphere more akin to a concert than a worship service, with elaborate staging, performances, and dramatizations that many say overshadowed the spiritual essence of communion. Critics argue that the line between entertainment and ministry has been crossed, sparking heated debates online about whether this service honored or trivialized the sacred tradition. This isn't just about one event. It's a window into a larger conversation about the evolution of megachurch culture, the blending of performance with faith, and the leadership choices of pastors like Jamal Bryant, who wield influence over thousands of congregants. Some say it's innovation, others see it as irreverence. And for church members who expected solemnity, the experience was nothing short of shocking. In this video, we'll break down exactly what happened at New Birth's communion service, examine the reactions from congregants and critics, and explore the broader implications for modern church culture. You won't believe the details, including behind-the-scenes revelations that insiders say the church leadership doesn't want the public to know. By the end of this video, you'll understand why this communion service has become one of the most talked about events in the country, and why Jamal Bryant's choices have sparked nationwide debate. On the morning of the highly anticipated communion service at New Birth Missionary Baptist Church, congregants expected the familiar solemnity that accompanies one of Christianity's most sacred rites. Communion, after all, is meant to be a moment of reflection, reverence, and spiritual connection, a time to honor the sacrifice of Christ in quiet devotion. But what unfolded at New Birth left many feeling shocked, confused, and even outraged. Eyewitnesses describe an atmosphere that resembled a theatrical production rather than a traditional worship service. Bright stage lighting illuminated the sanctuary, while music played at volumes more suited to a concert hall than a church. Choirs were elevated on platforms, performing elaborate choreography, while screens projected dynamic visuals across the walls. The focal point, which should have been the communion table, became almost secondary to the spectacle surrounding it. Pastor Jamal Bryant himself appeared in a strikingly dramatic entrance, dressed in elaborate robes and accompanied by a procession of ministers and performers. Instead of focusing solely on the bread and wine, he delivered an extended sermon that included improvisational elements, audience interaction, and moments that critics argue were more about performance than spiritual instruction. Several attendees noted that some of the symbolic aspects of communion were altered or overshadowed by the theatrics. Traditional prayers were shortened, and the distribution of the elements was interspersed with musical interludes. This blending of ritual and entertainment left a number of congregants questioning whether the sanctity of communion was maintained. The reaction online was swift and divided. Clips of the service spread across social media, sparking thousands of comments. Some viewers praised Jamal Bryant's modern approach, saying that his style brought new life to worship and helped engage younger congregants. Others criticized the event as disrespectful, arguing that the emphasis on spectacle diluted the sacredness of communion. Many commenters used words like showmanship, irreverent, and over the top to describe what they witnessed. But perhaps the most shocking aspect was the underlying message conveyed during the service. Observers noted that the sermon and accompanying visuals seemed to frame communion as a celebration of personal empowerment and church growth, rather than as a solemn act of remembrance. While there is room for innovation in worship, the juxtaposition of performance with sacred ritual struck many as controversial, a move that blurred the line between ministry and entertainment in a way few expected from a church of New Birth's stature. And yet, despite the backlash, Jamal Bryant defended the service on social media, framing it as a contemporary approach to faith that engages modern audiences. He argued that innovation in worship can coexist with reverence, suggesting that criticism comes from those resistant to change. But here's the twist many viewers may not realize. This wasn't the first time New Birth has been at the center of such debates. In fact, insiders suggest that the church has been experimenting with theatrical worship for years, and that this particular communion service represents the culmination of a long-term strategy to modernize and energize congregational experiences. The question now becomes, is this shift a genuine attempt to revitalize church services, or is it a calculated move that risks alienating longtime members while courting controversy for visibility? And more importantly, what does this say about Jamal Bryant's leadership and vision for New Birth? In the next section, we'll explore the reactions from church members, critics, and the wider public, and you won't believe some of the statements that have emerged in response to this unprecedented service. The response to New Birth's communion service was immediate and intense, both inside the church walls and across social media. For many congregants, what was intended to be a solemn, reflective moment turned into confusion, discomfort, and even outrage. The service's elaborate staging, performances, and unconventional approach to communion sparked debates about the boundaries of modern worship and the responsibilities of church leadership. Inside the church, reactions were mixed. Longtime members described feeling uneasy as they witnessed a service that felt more like a performance than a spiritual ritual. One attendee shared that they expected a quiet, contemplative atmosphere, but instead experienced pulsing music, dramatic lighting, and a sermon that emphasized showmanship over the traditional spiritual focus. Some members admitted feeling conflicted, torn between respect for Pastor Jamal Bryant's leadership and concern for the sanctity of the sacrament. On social media, the backlash was swift and unrelenting. Video clips from the service went viral, amassing millions of views within hours. Comments ranged from criticism of the theatrical elements to questioning the pastor's priorities. Words like disrespectful, overdone, and blurring sacred lines trended across platforms. Some viewers accused Bryant of prioritizing entertainment and personal branding over the core message of faith, suggesting that such dramatization undermines the spiritual significance of communion. But the reaction wasn't entirely negative. Some younger viewers and social media users praised the approach, arguing that Jamal Bryant is innovating worship in ways that resonate with contemporary audiences. Supporters said that engaging, dynamic presentations help make services more relatable and accessible, especially to younger generations who may find traditional formats less compelling. They claimed that the energy, music, and visual storytelling enhanced the communal experience rather than detracting from it. Religious commentators and critics added another layer to the debate. Some scholars pointed out that while churches have historically adapted their styles to cultural trends, there is always a delicate balance between innovation and tradition. Overstepping that line, they argue, can lead to alienation and controversy, especially when handling sacred rites like communion. Others noted that Jamal Bryant has a history of bold, charismatic leadership, suggesting that the communion service may have been intentionally designed to generate discussion and maintain visibility in an increasingly competitive religious landscape. Even fellow clergy members have weighed in, with some expressing concern over how theatrical elements may shift the focus from worship to spectacle. They worry that the emphasis on performance risks turning spiritual experiences into entertainment-driven events, potentially confusing congregants about the purpose and meaning of holy rituals. Meanwhile, others argue that Bryant is exercising creative leadership, seeking to connect with a modern audience while maintaining reverence in ways that challenge traditional assumptions. Public reaction extended far beyond church walls. News outlets, blogs, and social media influencers picked up the story, amplifying both criticism and defense of the service. Hashtags related to the event began trending, with conversations dissecting every element, from the music and lighting to Bryant's delivery and the visual dramatizations. The debate touched on broader questions about how contemporary churches balance innovation with respect for tradition, and whether high-profile leaders like Jamal Bryant are reshaping the expectations of what sacred worship should look like. Some insiders have even suggested that part of the controversy was anticipated by church leadership. Jamal Bryant and his team are known for their savvy understanding of media and public perception, and some speculate that they embrace the polarizing nature of the service as a way to spark conversation and maintain relevance in an era where viral moments can define public perception. Whether intentional or not, the service succeeded in drawing attention, raising questions about the ethics of blending sacred practices with spectacle. The controversy also sparked intense dialogue within congregational communities. Churchgoers started private discussions, social media forums, and live commentaries, debating whether the communion service was a visionary approach or a misstep in spiritual leadership. Some expressed fear that continued dramatization could erode the respect and sanctity of the church, while others believed that Bryant's leadership demonstrates a willingness to evolve and adapt to modern cultural expectations. But here's the key point that few outside the church may understand. The backlash goes beyond opinions. It touches on the tension between authority and accountability, tradition and innovation, sacredness and spectacle. Every reaction, positive or negative, reflects the larger conversation about how leaders like Jamal Bryant shape faith communities in ways that are both inspiring and controversial. To understand the uproar surrounding New Birth's recent communion service, it's essential to examine the broader context of Jamal Bryant's leadership. Bryant is no stranger to controversy, and his career has been defined by a combination of charismatic preaching, bold leadership decisions, and a flair for media attention. While many admire his energy, eloquence, and ability to engage congregants, his history also reveals patterns that shed light on why the communion service sparked such strong reactions. Bryant's rise in the ministry world has been meteoric. Known for his electrifying sermons, he has consistently drawn large crowds and captured national attention. His preaching style blends passion, storytelling, and contemporary references, making his messages relatable to younger and more diverse audiences. This approach has been praised for revitalizing interest in church attendance, particularly among millennials and Generation Z. However, with influence comes scrutiny. Over the years, Bryant has faced criticism for blending entertainment and ministry in ways some consider excessive. From his high-energy sermons to media-savvy appearances, detractors argue that his focus sometimes shifts from spiritual guidance to self-promotion. While supporters emphasize his ability to reach people in new and creative ways, skeptics question whether spectacle occasionally overshadows substance. Several past controversies illuminate this pattern. Bryant has been publicly criticized for his handling of church finances, lavish lifestyle choices, and personal matters that became fodder for media coverage. Each incident contributed to a perception among critics that his leadership often prioritizes visibility and image over the quiet stewardship expected of spiritual leaders. These past controversies set the stage for reactions to the communion service. The public had already been primed to scrutinize every move. Additionally, Bryant has a history of making bold, headline-grabbing decisions within New Birth. From introducing modern worship elements to controversial policies, his tenure has been marked by experimentation and a willingness to challenge tradition. While some view these choices as innovative, others perceive them as risky or even disrespectful to long-standing church practices. The communion service controversy fits this pattern, blending creativity, spectacle, and devotion in a way that is provocative and conversation-worthy. It's also important to consider the role of New Birth itself. The church is one of the largest and most influential African American congregations in the country, with a long history of public attention. Its size, reach, and media presence amplify any controversy, meaning that even small deviations from tradition are likely to attract national attention. Bryant's leadership style, confident, media-aware, and unapologetically bold, ensures that the church remains in the public eye, for better or worse. Some insiders suggest that Bryant views controversy as a tool. By pushing boundaries and challenging expectations, he keeps his church relevant in a media-saturated world. His strategy seems to combine spiritual messaging with showmanship, ensuring that New Birth remains a focal point of discussion in religious and cultural circles alike. This approach, however, comes with risks. As the communion service demonstrates, balancing innovation with reverence is a delicate act, and one misstep can ignite intense backlash. And while critics focus on spectacle, supporters argue that Bryant's leadership has brought tangible benefits. Attendance at New Birth remains high, and his influence extends into social activism, mentorship, and community development. Many congregants defend his approach, insisting that engaging modern audiences requires creativity, energy, and sometimes breaking from tradition. They see the communion service not as disrespectful, but as an evolution in worship designed to make sacred experiences more accessible and memorable. Yet the communion service controversy highlights a key tension in Bryant's leadership: the line between inspiration and provocation. His willingness to innovate is undeniable, but the public's reaction shows that even charismatic leaders cannot fully control perception. What some see as bold leadership, others interpret as overreach, raising important questions about accountability, tradition, and the role of spectacle in modern ministry. In short, Jamal Bryant's leadership style is both his strength and his vulnerability. His charisma and innovation drive New Birth's growth, but his tendency toward theatricality and headline-making decisions sets the stage for controversies like the communion service. Understanding this history is crucial for making sense of why this event drew such strong reactions, and why it continues to fuel debate about the evolving nature of worship in megachurches. The controversy surrounding Jamal Bryant's communion service at New Birth Missionary Baptist Church isn't just about one event. It's part of a much larger conversation about the evolution of modern worship, the rise of megachurch culture, and the role of media in shaping public perception of faith leaders. To understand why this communion service sparked national debate, it's important to look beyond the stage lights and musical performances and consider the broader implications. Megachurches like New Birth have long been at the intersection of faith, community, and entertainment. These large congregations, often with thousands of members, operate not only as places of worship, but also as centers for social engagement, education, and media influence. Leaders like Jamal Bryant are expected to inspire, guide, and innovate, all while maintaining spiritual integrity. but with visibility comes scrutiny. Every decision, from sermon style to worship format, is amplified by cameras, social media, and public commentary. In the case of the communion service, the blending of theatrical elements with sacred rituals highlights a growing tension in megachurch culture: how to balance innovation and engagement with respect for tradition. Modern worship often seeks to attract diverse audiences, especially younger congregants who are accustomed to dynamic experiences. Music, visuals, and interactive elements can make services more immersive, but they also risk overshadowing the spiritual essence of rites like communion. The new birth service became a flashpoint for this debate, sparking discussions among religious scholars, congregants, and the general public about what worship should look like in the 21st century. Public perception is another critical factor. In the age of social media, any deviation from tradition can quickly become viral. The clips from New Birth service circulated widely, inviting opinions from people far removed from the church community. Some critics framed the event as a reflection of moral decline or commercialization of faith, while others defended it as a bold step toward relevance and engagement. This polarization illustrates a broader societal debate about the intersection of religion and entertainment, and the expectations placed on spiritual leaders in the public eye. The communion service also raises questions about accountability in leadership. In a megachurch setting, pastors wield immense influence over congregants' beliefs, behaviors, and expectations. Decisions about how to conduct services, particularly sacred rituals, are not merely aesthetic. They shape spiritual experience and perception. Bryant's choice to emphasize spectacle over solemnity may appeal to some, but for others, it challenges the boundaries of reverence and trust. Leaders in similar positions must navigate these dynamics carefully, as missteps can impact not only reputation but also the faith and engagement of the congregation. Another implication is the ongoing conversation about faith accessibility. Proponents of modern dynamic services argue that theatrical elements and media integration make religion more relatable, especially for younger audiences or those unfamiliar with traditional practices. Critics, however, warn that such approaches can prioritize entertainment over worship, turning spiritual experiences into performance-driven events. The New Birth Communion service illustrates both sides of this debate, providing a case study for how megachurches grapple with maintaining relevance in an evolving cultural landscape. Finally, the event sheds light on the broader tension between innovation and tradition in religious institutions. Churches have historically adapted to cultural shifts, from music styles to architectural design. Yet, there remains a delicate balance between evolving to meet contemporary needs and preserving sacred practices. The public reaction to New Birth service demonstrates just how high the stakes are. In a world where every service can be recorded, shared, and analyzed, leaders must weigh the benefits of innovation against potential backlash from their congregants and the wider community.